In the heart of Pandora, where the forests breathed like living giants and the mountains floated above the clouds, a war was coming. Not a war for land, not a war for power, but a war for survival. And at the center of it all stood one unstoppable force, Kong. For years, Pandora had known peace after endless bloodshed. The Na'vi rebuilt their sacred lands. The rivers ran pure again. The creatures of the jungle moved in harmony. But peace on Pandora never lasted forever, because somewhere far beyond the stars, humanity was preparing for its return. This time they did not come for diplomacy. They did not come for science. They came with one mission: to conquer. Leading this invasion was a name feared even among soldiers, Colonel Miles Quaritch. But this was not the same man Pandora had seen before. No. This version of Miles was larger, stronger, more brutal than anything the world had ever faced. Through forbidden genetic experiments and advanced military engineering, the RDA had turned him into a monstrous super soldier. A giant, a beast wearing the mind of a killer. His body was enhanced with alien DNA, armored skin, cybernetic implants, and raw hatred. He was no longer just a colonel. He was a weapon. A walking war machine built for one purpose: to kill Kong and crush Pandora once and for all. And when the first dropships tore through the sky like thunder, Pandora itself seemed to tremble. The Na'vi looked up in fear as fire rained from above. Trees exploded into flames. Sacred grounds were torn apart by missiles. Creatures screamed through the jungle as metal beasts marched into their world. The humans had returned with tanks, gunships, drones, and giant exosuits unlike anything seen before. This was not an attack. This was an extermination. Jake Sully and Neytiri rallied the clans as quickly as they could. Warriors mounted their Ikran. Arrows were drawn. Battle cries echoed through the forest, but even they knew this enemy was different. Then came the moment that froze the battlefield. A massive steel door opened on the lead dropship. Smoke poured out, heavy footsteps shook the ground, and out of the fire stepped Colonel Miles. He stood nearly as tall as the jungle trees around him, muscles like iron, eyes burning with rage. His armor fused into his body like a second skin. In one hand, he carried a colossal energy blade. In the other, a pulse cannon powerful enough to tear mountains apart. The Na'vi stared in horror. Miles looked across the burning battlefield and smiled. "Bring me Kong," he said. Deep in the hidden valley beyond the floating cliffs, Kong felt it. He felt the explosions. He felt the pain of the land. He felt the fear in the creatures around him. The jungle was not just his home. It was part of him, and something evil had entered it. Kong rose from the shadows of the mountain caves, his massive chest heaving like thunder. He was older now, stronger, scarred by countless battles. Every step he took made the earth shake. Birds scattered into the sky, the trees bent under his presence. He stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down at the fires consuming Pandora. Then he roared. A roar so powerful it rolled across the mountains like an earthquake. A roar of fury, of warning, of war. The Na'vi heard it and knew their king had awakened. As Miles and his forces pushed deeper into the sacred forest, the jungle suddenly went silent. Too silent. Even the machines paused. The soldiers looked around nervously. Then the ground began to tremble. One tremor, then another, then louder, heavier. Miles turned, and from the smoke through shattered trees and burning debris emerged Kong, towering, furious. Majestic, a mountain of muscle and primal wrath. For a moment, even the human soldiers forgot to breathe. Kong's eyes locked onto Miles. Miles stared back. Two kings, two monsters. Two forces of nature standing face to face. And then all hell broke loose. Miles fired first. The pulse cannon erupted with blue energy, blasting straight into Kong's chest. The impact sent shockwaves through the jungle, throwing trees and bodies in every direction. Kong stumbled back with a roar of pain, but he did not fall. Instead, he grabbed a giant boulder from the earth and hurled it like a missile. Miles leapt aside just as the rock exploded against a gunship behind him, sending it crashing into the forest in flames. Kong charged. Every step was like a bomb hitting the ground. He slammed both fists down, crushing tanks and scattering soldiers like ants. Miles met him head-on, sprinting with terrifying speed for something his size. He jumped into the air and drove his energy blade across Kong's shoulder, slicing deep into flesh. Kong roared and backhanded him with enough force to shatter cliffs. Miles flew through the jungle, smashing through giant trees before slamming into the side of a mountain. Dust and rock exploded around him, but then he stood up, smiling, bleeding but smiling. That's when Kong realized the truth. This thing was not human anymore. It was a monster, and it wanted him dead. The battle spread across Pandora like a storm. Kong ripped up trees and swung them like clubs. Miles countered with missiles, blades, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. Every punch cracked the air. Every collision sent shockwaves through the valley. The jungle around them was being torn apart by pure violence. Above them, Ikran riders attacked the RDA ships while banshees screamed through the smoke. Jake Sully led the charge from the sky, diving through explosions and firing arrows into enemy pilots. Neytiri moved like death through the battlefield, striking soldiers one by one with deadly precision. But even with all their courage, they could not stop Miles. Because Miles had one thing the others didn't. He understood fear, and he used it like a weapon. He baited Kong, provoked him, forced him into traps. He knew Kong's strength was his rage. So he fed it. Every missile launched near Navi children, every sacred tree burned, every creature slaughtered. It was all part of the plan. Make Kong lose control, and then kill him. At the edge of the shattered valley stood the Tree of Voices, one of the holiest places in all of Pandora. The roots pulsed with Iwa's living energy. The air shimmered with spiritual light. And Miles marched toward it. Kong saw him. His eyes widened, because if Miles destroyed that tree, Pandora itself could fall. With a roar that shook the heavens, Kong charged faster than ever before. He bulldozed through flames, crushed armored walkers beneath his feet, and leapt over burning wreckage like a force of nature unleashed. Miles turned and opened fire with everything he had. Explosions ripped across Kong's body. His fur burned. His skin tore, blood streamed down his arms, but he kept coming. Nothing could stop him now. He tackled Miles just before he reached the sacred roots, and both titans crashed through the forest floor into a deep, glowing cavern beneath the tree. The world above went silent. Now it was just them, Kong and Miles, face to face in the beating heart of Pandora. The cavern glowed with blue bioluminescent light. Ancient roots wrapped around the walls like veins. Water dripped from crystal rock. It felt less like a cave and more like the inside of a living god. Miles rose slowly, his armor sparking. Kong beat his chest. The final round had begun. Miles lunged first, slashing with his blade. Kong dodged and grabbed his arm, smashing him into the stone wall. The cavern shook violently. Miles drove a metal knee into Kong's ribs and fired a point-blank energy blast into his jaw. Kong staggered. Miles attacked relentlessly. Punch, blade, blast, kick. A brutal, savage barrage. Kong crashed into the glowing roots, groaning in pain. For the first time, he looked weak. Miles stepped forward, breathing heavily, his eyes wild. "You're not a king," he growled. "You're just another animal." He raised the energy blade for the killing strike, but then something changed. The roots behind Kong began to glow brighter. The light spread across the cavern floor like living fire. Iwa had awakened. The spirits of Pandora moved through the roots, through the air, through the very ground beneath them. Kong looked up as the glowing energy surrounded his body. It wasn't magic, it was connection, strength. The entire planet answering his pain, and Kong rose again, stronger than before. Miles swung the blade down. Kong caught it with both hands. The cavern exploded with force. Then Kong snapped the blade in half. Miles' face changed. For the first time, he felt fear. Kong roared directly into his face and unleashed everything. He hammered Miles with a storm of punches that shook the cavern. He ripped off the cannon from his arm. He slammed him through stone pillars, crushed him beneath shattered roots, and hurled him across the glowing abyss like a broken machine. Miles tried to stand. Kong did not let him. With one final earth-shaking roar, Kong lifted the giant colonel high above his head and slammed him into the heart of the cavern floor. The impact cracked the earth. Light burst from the roots. And Colonel Miles stopped moving. Silence. No gunfire, no screams, no machines, only the sound of Pandora breathing once more. Kong stood over the fallen monster, his chest rising and falling, blood dripping from his wounds. He was battered, burned, exhausted, but he was still standing. Above the cavern, the remaining human forces saw their commander had fallen. Panic spread instantly. Gunships retreated. Soldiers fled. The invasion collapsed in chaos. Jake and the Na'vi drove them out of the valley as the jungle itself seemed to fight back. Vines wrapped around machines. Beasts charged from the trees. The land had chosen its side. And humanity lost. When Kong finally emerged from beneath the tree of voices, the Na'vi stood waiting. No one spoke. No one moved. Then one by one they bowed, not out of fear, but respect. Because on that day, Kong had not just defended Pandora, he had become part of it. A guardian, a legend, a living force of nature tied to the soul of the world itself. As the fires died and the stars returned above the floating mountains, Kong climbed to the highest cliff overlooking the valley. The wind moved through his fur. The moonlight touched the scars of battle across his body.